Times were really dire in Oklahoma City, and the city, for so many reasons, couldn't keep up with maintaining infrastructure, let alone trying to build destinations, right? Building stuff that people had a sense of pride in. These policies, these will affect generations beyond you and me. These will, be in place and the foundations to build off for the rest of our city's history.
Welcome to the Community Center for Eryngo Urbanism, a show about bringing people together within cities that are able to equip each resident with the tools they need to build a stronger future for themselves and for their neighbors. I'm Kyler. I'll be your host for today. I'm an architect and design communicator based out of Oklahoma City. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest who will be helping us answer the question, who is Landry Willis? Landry Willis, welcome to the show. Could you start us off by telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Landry Willis. I am a candidate for Oklahoma City Council Ward 6. And currently, I work for Francis Renewable Energy, doing government relations. We are a EV charging company based here in Oklahoma. Francis built the very first statewide fast charging network out of any state in the nation right here in Oklahoma, which means we have a fast charger within 50 miles of any given location, even up in the Panhandle. And also, we as a company have received the most NEVI grants, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure grants. That was part of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And my role is grant writing under the NEVI program, and also zoning and permitting for EV chargers.
And why would you say you're running for city council?
Yeah, the primary thing that I want to accomplish as a city council member is working for the average everyday person. And I think the number one issue that people are facing right now in our city is the affordability. The city's two primary responsibilities are land use, aka housing, and transportation. And having somebody in there that has experience with both, I think, is very valuable. And then also having the representation for the next generation. There's so many young professionals here in our city, and there's not too much representation for us. One of my, roles right now with Francis is to be in the weeds. It's my job to read and digest complex documents and find, the one sentence, the one phrase that's going to either, say we're going to apply for this grant or we're not going to apply for this grant. And then also I work with the ADU ordinance. One little sentence, one word can be the difference in achieving the goal that you want and not achieving that goal. And I think it's beneficial to have somebody in there that realizes that, and a policymaker that realizes that. And that's something that I enjoy doing. I grew up in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and also McLeod, Oklahoma. Those two towns are right next to each other, just east of Oklahoma City. And I had a great life growing up, but it wasn't, without its challenges. My father served in the Air Force, and he served in Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield. And while he was over there, he was exposed to the burn pits that they used over there, and he had a lot of health issues from his exposure. And when he came back home, he ultimately passed away due to his exposure to the burn pits. So that was very challenging for our family growing up. But my mom, Nikki Willis, she really stepped up for our family. It's funny enough, she went to college to be a teacher, and back then she couldn't get a job as a teacher. She applied to so many different places, and then eventually my brother and I were born, so she just kind of worked part-time. And it's kind of crazy to think about that. A teacher couldn't find a job. It's crazy how much Oklahoma education has, I guess, slipped. But she worked her butt off after my father passed away, and she got her nursing's license and became a nurse and gave us a great life. And forever thankful for her for doing that. Then after I graduated high school, I went to Rose State College, and just like any 18 or 19-year-old, it's always tough to make a decision about what you want to do for the rest of your life. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so happy I went to a community college. So that I didn't spend thousands of dollars, trying to figure out a major. And I started off as meteorology, growing up here in Oklahoma, especially rural Oklahoma. We've all had exposures to tornadoes, and I always thought that was the coolest thing. So I started off as a meteorology major, and then I soon came to realize that organic chemistry wasn't my forte. And there was, a semester there that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And part of the first couple of years of college is getting your basics done. And part of that is political science classes. And my professor, Dr. Emily Stacy, I love her to death. I had her for intro to American government. And then all my other, environmental science classes that I was taking, I learned about all the issues that are facing, our world and our country. And it's really easy to learn about all those issues. But it's also, very stressful and overwhelming. You kind of feel like you're a little bit helpless. What I wanted to do is figure out solutions. And that's what Dr. Stacy really installed in me was solutions through policy. And that's kind of what I based my whole education on afterwards is how do we solve these big issues that are facing our world and our country? Climate change, plastic pollution. Those are still passions of mine, but that's kind of what I based my education on. So at Rose State, I got 2 degrees at political science and environmental science. Then I transferred up to St. Louis University. It's kind of a little bit random, but kind of wanted to get out of town for a little bit, get to explore a whole new city. It was a great opportunity that I had, and I did it. When I went up there, I didn't know really anybody, and so I got to explore one of our great American cities, and it was a really good time, and it was kind of my first exposure to urbanism. I had a lot of great professors up there, and took a lot of great classes there, and it was there that I kind of rode my first public transportation, the metro line. I just thought it was so cool that you could walk down the street, take the train down to see a Cardinals game. I thought that was really cool. And after I graduated from SLU, St. Louis University, I got 2 degrees, the same thing, political science, environmental science, and then I moved back here to Oklahoma City. And like any young professional, it's kind of challenging to find a job. And one of the things that I did throughout college was work on campaigns. I worked on Joy Hoffmeister's campaign for governor. I worked on a bunch of other campaigns and volunteered campaigns knocking doors. And that's what I did for about 6 months when I got back here to Oklahoma City, and until I was able to land, my first quote unquote big boy job with the Oklahoma City Realtors, doing government affairs for them. And that's when I met you, Kyler, with my work on the ADU ordinance, ADU accessory dwelling unit. The realtors, we worked on that. That ordinance was in work, prior to my time with the realtors, but it really started heating up and introduced to the planning commission, and then ultimately, passage by the city council my time with the realtors.
What are some of the most important issues to you, and how do you hope to have an impact on some of these issues?
Yeah, I think personally for me, the biggest issue is veterans affairs. I don't think our city does enough for our veterans, and obviously it's an issue that's deeply personal to me. I've taken part in the point in time count several times, and it's a shame when you count somebody that's experiencing homelessness and they're a veteran. There's a lot more that the city can do on that. And the affordability crisis that I think people in this country, in this state, in this city are facing, we're having a lot of growing pains. We're the seventh fastest growing city in the nation. And with that, we can both relate to this being young professionals. It's not always the easiest, and it's hard to get by and hard for people to get ahead. And that's another thing that participating in the point in time count, there's so many people that are one instance away from experiencing homelessness. So, our transmission could go out in our car tomorrow, or anything. One hospital trip that can just be the domino that falls that ultimately leads to homelessness. And that's something that I take with me and that I will take with me in my decision making. And when you look at the two primary responsibilities of our city and of the council, land use and transportation. And you look at that, and that's probably two of the three biggest costs for a household, maybe behind healthcare costs. Land use, right? Housing. What policies can we put in place? What can we do as a city to continue to diversify our housing inventory, get more inventory on the market, and also, rehab existing inventory that we have throughout the city? That's something that I have a lot of experience with working on the ADU ordinance, but that's something that I'm going to be looking towards to finish that fight and get the zoning and coding update across the finish line. And then transportation, right? The average American spends over $12,000 a year on a car. With the war in Iran and gas prices, I guarantee you that number's gone up. And that data's old. I'm sure it's probably closer to $15,000 now. What can we do as a city to instill confidence in our public transportation system, in our walkability and our bicycle infrastructure to maybe, next time the transmission goes out on the car, you say, okay, well, I can just bike to work. I can just take the bus to work. We have a good foundation, I think, for a good public transportation system. But every single major transportation decision within our city post World War II has been centered around the car. And I think we, as a society, are people feel the impacts of that. And when you're reliant on thousands, tens of thousands of dollars box that has so many different moving components that can go wrong at any given time, it puts people in a bad situation. And that's what I'm looking for is how can we continue to build infrastructure that people can have the confidence, the average person can have the confidence to switch to, maybe one car household, or maybe it's no car household. That's my goal is the next generation of Oklahoma Cityans, you only have to have one car household. That frees up, that $12,000 that can go towards family vacation, a kid's college, people's hobbies. That can go towards so many other things, getting ahead, and that's what I'm looking towards.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are all great. I'm curious. So, growing up in Shawnee and then living in St. Louis, and then now being a resident of downtown OKC, how have these places shaped your perception of urbanism, of walkability, and just what it means to have a city?
Yeah, I think I've lived in every single type of city. In McLeod, it's very rural. I've lived, kind of out in the country per se. And then Shawnee is, I would say a medium-sized or small city. Then Midwest City, I would say that's, maybe medium towards the large. And then St. Louis and Oklahoma City, those are large, some of our best American cities. Oklahoma City, the best American city. And so I've got to experience every single type of, I guess, built environment in urbanism. And growing up, yeah, there wasn't any public transportation or anything like that. So getting exposed to that has been great.
I feel like you're one of the people I've met who has sort of gotten hooked on transit. Like can't stop. Once you start riding the bus places, some people are like, this is awful. But some people are like, I want to ride every bus.
That is me to a T. And the realtors, when I worked there, one of the things we did was we did a lot of conferences. And we heard about the success stories for other realtor boards across the country. And a lot of them was passing transit initiatives like ones we're going to see here with One Transit, and then getting to ride that system. They always did like a cool little tour. And that's really started my transit addiction. And then also just being on, transit YouTube, watching Miles and Transit, just following down that rabbit hole. And yeah, I'm hooked.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see some of the future transit improvements around the city. And in fact, so we have the BRT currently, which is goes up to Northwest OKC. And then there's two more of those coming.
Mhm.
And then the One Transit, as you mentioned, is doing a bunch of stuff that if you want to find out more about, subscribe to the podcast feed. We will be talking more about that in the future.
Yes. Yes.
On the topic of transit, you are somebody who often, I guess you and I both are people who often traverse the distance between Oklahoma City and Tulsa. So why
Mhm.
don't we have a train yet?
I ask myself that every day I drive on the turnpike. Francis is based here in Tulsa, so I frequent the turnpike quite a bit. And wouldn't it just be so nice if we could just have a train and we didn't have to pay the turnpike authority? I think I've been at this job for like 4 months and my turnpike bill is insane that I've racked up. We can dream. Maybe one day we'll get a train. I can just say I know the financial conditions of our state government, and I don't know. I don't have the most confidence in our state government, and especially it's kind of rule dominated, and connecting two urban centers is maybe not something that's on a lot of legislators' minds per se. Any other major metropolitan city, they have the state offers a lot of grants to backfill capital projects and be part of the capital stack, and coordination with the various agencies to get stuff done, whether that's ODOT. It's just tough to work with them because they're so underfunded.
Outside of politics and urbanism, what are some of your hobbies and interests that you have?
Yeah. No, I love to ride my bike or go on a run. That's the best way to start the morning. Keeps me grounded. Then outside of that, I'm a little nerdy. I love playing video games and Pokemon cards, Legos. I'm a big nerd on the inside, and yeah, I think that's it. Is that a good answer, you think?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that was great. So you are somebody who is very engaged with politics, interested in what's going on with politics, and like, how does that play a role in like your decision to go into government? I mean, I guess which came first? Were you interested in it? Then you met that professor who pushed you to do politics stuff, or was it the other way around where once you started studying it, then you were like, oh, like I kind of, because I feel like for me, it was that way where I was studying architecture and then I became interested further into urbanism and that kind of thing.
I guess really for me, it was just learning about all the issues that our world and our country and our state and city are facing. It's pretty stressful stuff, and you can learn about all that stuff all day long, and feel pretty helpless. I just wanted to figure out solutions to that, and that's kind of what led me to my work in politics, or in government relations. um, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. What was your role in that whole process of the ADU ordinance, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so my work with the realtors, I guess just step back. Every area in our country is represented by a realtor board, and every major metropolitan area is represented by a realtor board. Not all realtor boards, but most major metropolitan area realtor boards have government affairs staff, and I served on the government affairs staff, and we were very lucky to be able to play, I guess you can say, offense. Some realtor boards, their government affairs program is more based on defense, and ours was on offense. And offense for the realtors is affordable housing and public transportation. We realize that the American dream of home ownership is fading for so many people. And is out of the reach for so many people because housing prices are going up. And one of the things that I learned throughout the ADU process was, well, first, it was a master class on how to get a policy initiative crossed at the municipal level, specifically here in Oklahoma City. It was from being introduced at the Planning Commission to passage at the City Council. It was just under a year, and within that year, we met with every single planning commissioner, met with every single council member, and also met with residents and the city staff multiple times. And, prior to my job with, oh, What's her name?
This is Marigold.
Marigold. Oh, she's so cute. Yeah, prior to my work with the realtors, I'll be honest, I didn't know what an ADU was. Obviously, I do now. I feel like I can go into any city and probably draft up a pretty good ADU ordinance. My main takeaway was that in Oklahoma City, we are severely lacking missing middle housing. It's either we have plenty of single family housing, and that there's a place for that in the market, and that's good. But it's mostly single family or it's apartment complexes, big apartment complexes. And there's also a place for that in the market. In our market and here in Oklahoma City, we don't have the missing middle housing that we need. And another big takeaway was the SPUD process.
You mentioned SPUDs, special planned unit developments. What is that? How does that process work? And like, why do we maybe need to stop doing that so much?
Yeah, so a SPUD is basically rezoning a piece of property to allow for a use or a type of building that's not allowed or accounted for within our zoning and coding. And the average person can't get through that process. It's a complex process that you have to hire, an attorney to probably represent you and get the necessary documents to city staff and the planning commission and city council. And it's a time consuming process that the average person looks at and they're not going to go through that. So prior to the ADU ordinance, you would have to get a SPUD to build an ADU. You have to get a SPUD to, build triplex, quadplex. There's been some interesting SPUDs. Yeah, there's always some type of interesting SPUD.
I think one time you were giving me a ride somewhere and you pointed at one specific building and said, that's why we need to not have SPUDs. I will
Yes,
not say the address of that building or anything on the podcast,
I know
but
exactly which one you're talking about. And yeah, so the SPUD process though, it's not something that's not, baked to our code or into our ordinances. And so it is less predictable an outcome. And you can ride around our city and you can see these funky structures that don't fit the character of the neighborhood. And that happened because of a SPUD. And oftentimes the planning commission and the city council doesn't have the expertise or the time to properly scrutinize the SPUD. And then also an issue with it is it puts a lot of stress on the permitting staff because there's thousands of unique SPUDs and they have to interpret that SPUD. And sometimes their interpretation doesn't capture what the planning commission and the city council or the residents that have to live by it wanted. And um, you get unpredictable outcomes that residents and neighbors aren't very necessarily too happy with, because it doesn't the structure that's built there doesn't match the character of the neighborhood. As a city, this was one way to limit the SPUD process for ADUs, and as a city, that's something that we're working on is getting away from the SPUD process, allowing development to buy right where it's more predictable, and for neighbors, for residents, and for the community as a whole.
yeah. Yeah. And I think so. Actually, this is great timing because the previous episode that came out will have been Lisa Chronister talking about the zoning code update.
Nice.
So if you are listening to this and you want to hear more about what's coming on that, go listen to that one. Throughout the process of going through the ADU ordinance, what were your interactions like with people who would maybe be considered the not in my backyard NIMBY type? And how do you think we get those people on board with a lot of this stuff? Like, how do we get people to understand the value of infill housing, better transit, things like that, that people tend to kind of push back against?
Yeah, I mean, I think those people's passion stems from protecting their neighborhood. And I think that's something that we can all agree on. Everybody wants their neighborhood to anything that gets built. I think they want it to match the character of the neighborhood. Now, I think that for me, yes, the building materials, the architecture of any structure that gets built, especially, within our historic neighborhoods or, or neighborhoods within the core, it needs to match that character. Where I differ from some of those people is the density. It's great if there would be a quadplex, triplex, duplex, ADU, more density, more units within a neighborhood. I don't think that's harmful, right? How it looks and how it makes people when they look at it, and how it makes them feel when they look at it. I think that's what matters. The material, the architectural style, that needs to match, the character of the neighborhood. That's where we can find common ground. But, that's part of the update is, making sure that structures that are built match the character of the neighborhood. Where, I differ is the amount of units. I think that having a neighborhood that is dense and has a diversity of housing is great. And I don't think that harms the neighborhood. And I guess, one of the other things that I learned in this may be my youth speaking, may not be the most like politically smart thing to say, but a lot of people don't have the time to come down or, even the interest to come down to City Hall, to the Planning Commission, to the City Council meeting, to the different, town halls and workshops. People don't have the time. People are struggling to get by. People are working jobs. And, some of the people that do come and speak, they may, maybe they're older or they're, more wealthier, they're retired. But yeah, they're not representative.
I do think the last time I saw you in person was at that zoning code update meeting where we were interrupted in the middle to have to go shelter in place for a storm, very Oklahoma
Mhm.
experience there. But during that meeting, I felt encouraged by hearing voices from both sides there. There were people who were basically speaking up saying, hey, what if I support this and actually want you to go further than what you've proposed here? And I thought that was very encouraging. And from what I heard about the ADU process, it was a little more oppositional at first, but I think that was a good starting point
Mhm.
to get people to understand, hey, this is what we're up against. And this is how the process works and this is how to get involved. And so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to add is that certain people, certain residents may not be the biggest fans of the ADU ordinance or the zoning and coding update. But ultimately, these policies, these will affect generations beyond you and me. These will, be in place and the foundations to build off for the rest of our city's history.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. These things, they have a lasting impact.
Hmm.
What do you love about Oklahoma City? Why is Oklahoma City, as you've said, the greatest city in the country?
There's a lot of great things happening in our city. It is such an exciting time to live here. We're the seventh fastest growing city in the nation. There's so many young professionals like ourselves getting our start here, and we have so many great districts, whether it's the Plaza, the Paseo, Capitol Hill, that are up and coming. And for me, why I think it's the best city is I'm a huge history buff, right? And we all know the story of maps and the success with that and urban renewal, the economic downturn in the 80s, Penn Square Bank, everything that growing up, my parents, you wouldn't want to get caught in downtown Oklahoma City at night when they were growing up, when they were young. And that's like the complete opposite now. And just see and be a part of that transition, it's exciting to be a part of.
I think you're the second person on the podcast to say that the story of maps was something that inspired you to get involved with local decision making and local processes like that. So what is maps for anybody who's not local and maybe doesn't know? And what are some of the outcomes that have been really beneficial from that for Oklahoma City? And what do you see for maps in the future?
Yeah, no, great question. MAPS, Metropolitan Area Projects, is a one penny sales tax that builds infrastructure and destinations across our city. The first one passed in 1992. Prior to that, that was our city's low point. That was post urban renewal, post the economic downturn in the 80s, Penn Square Bank. Times were, really dire in Oklahoma City. And the city, for so many reasons, couldn't keep up with maintaining infrastructure, let alone trying to build destinations, right? Building stuff that people had a sense of pride in. That wasn't a possibility. Prior to 1992. Yeah, the first maps passed. It was a close vote. There's the downtown library, the canal, finishing up the damming up the river. Like, I'm missing so many. There's so many of our iconic destinations and attractions and infrastructure, quality of life improvements across our city can be linked to maps. After Maps 1, it was Maps for Kids. Oklahoma City's public schools, they had a hard time passing a bond issue to have that capital budget to update and build new infrastructure for students. Then after Maps for Kids, it was Maps 3. I ride along the Maps 3 bike trail system when I go on rides all the time. Scissortail Park was Maps 3. I run around in Scissortail Park. That's part of my little daily running route that I do. The convention center. There's so many just great things that Maps has built. Most recently, Maps 4, that's, getting implemented right now. And something that I'm very excited for is Maps 5 in 2034. It's a while, it's a long ways away, but that work right now to get projects in and infrastructure in, that's happening right now. And that's where a lot of the city's capital budget goes.
One of the things to me about maps that's so interesting is that it hits on so many different aspects of life in the city and all of these different things. Like, for example, there's mental health facilities, there's civil rights center, buses, the number of bus stops throughout the city that are being upgraded due to maps is astounding. And it's all these different things all wrapped up into one. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about maps is that it's so encompassing. It covers so many different issues from mental health to housing for veterans, to digital part. Right? It covers so much. And I think one of our issues here in Oklahoma City is that we have to rely on ourselves, right? We don't have the best partners at the state level. Anybody that has spent any time at the Capitol, like myself, can come to the conclusion very quick that the state isn't the best. And then same thing for the federal government. Every 4 years, there's a different administration, and obviously the priorities and the beliefs of administration reflect. My current role right now, we're experiencing the federal grants, but that's something that you can't rely on. So we, as Oklahoma City, that's how we invest in ourselves. Maps allows us to do the things that we need to do, ensures that we don't have to rely on partners that aren't reliable, like our state and our federal government.
Yeah. I guess an important question is, do you think the Thunder will win a second year in a row?
I think
What are
so.
your thoughts?
At the time of this recording, I think we had 10 games left, and I think we will have the game coming up Friday. I think we will have all of our players back healthy for one of the first times in our season. We've had a lot of injuries this season, but we're still number one seed in the West. I mean, SGA has been unstoppable, 20 plus points for over, how many games is it now? It's almost 130 games now. It's just insane. Nothing's guaranteed. We'll have to see what happens in the playoffs, but I don't know. I wouldn't bet if I was a betting man. I would not bet against our Thunder. That's for sure. I would not bet against them.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't be.
No, you'd be losing money like crazy.
So I know that something that's really important to you is integrity, transparency, people understanding what's happening in the government and understanding how to get involved or just generally knowing what's
Mhm.
happening. So how are you going to bring that into your role as city councilor?
Yeah, I think that so many people of our generation, they don't do politics. They don't worry about politics. It is so toxic and dehumanizing that they just don't, they don't worry about it. And I don't blame them. Right now, trust in government and our institutions is at an all-time low. And honestly, rightfully so. One of the things that we in Oklahoma will have experience with yesterday. Mark Wayne Mullen was just confirmed as Homeland Secretary. And he was, I think, the most prolific stock trader in Congress. I saw an article, he made, $25 million of trades in stocks. And that's just insane. The insider trading in this administration and in Congress, it runs counter to everything that America was built on. And like I said, I kind of think back to the average everyday person, and the average everyday person doesn't have access to the information and serve on these committees and get these briefings that sitting members of Congress do. And they're really ripping off the average person. And so with that, one of the things that I love is keeping track of this Instagram account. It's called Stalking the Capitol. And they also have an app on the App Store. It's called Integrity Index. And they track and analyze every single member of Congress, their net worth, their stock trading, and also their donors. And that's another thing is corporate big interests. They, especially at the national level, it's so hard to get anything done because the interests are very well represented up there, and they are able to do that with their money. And one of the pledges that I will take as a candidate is I will never hold any individual stocks. I will never take any donations from any corporate PACs, political action committees. And then also one of the things that I'm incorporating in our campaign website is my net worth tracker. So you can see how much my net worth is. Hopefully that shows some form of transparency and instills some faith in people as and hopefully it encourages some people to get involved in the local decision making process. I want to encourage people to get involved, reach out, send an email, because that's one thing I've learned throughout my career working with city government and also state governments, that when people send emails in to legislators, I guess the good ones, they really take those into account in their decision making. That's one of my questions I'm going to ask, and I do ask when I knock doors, is what are the issues important to you? What should we be working on? Because you elect me.
So how do people who are interested in getting involved with your campaign or just at least following along with what's happening, where can they stay informed?
Yeah, we'll be on all the social media. I probably most active on Instagram, and we'll have a website. Just Google Landry Willis, City Council, Oklahoma City, and it'll pop up. But I want to encourage people to reach out, get involved. Sounds crazy, but knocking doors, I love knocking doors. I'm kind of more of an introvert myself, so knocking doors wasn't something that was on my radar until I did it, and I really loved it. Just talking to people, talking about the issues important to them. So encourage people to come out, maybe knock some doors. I'll teach you the ropes, and don't hesitate to reach out and get involved. This is, I want this campaign to involve everybody.
Awesome. Well, Landry, thank you for coming on the show. It was great to have you, and hopefully maybe I'll have you back on when you're city council.
No, well, I would love that. Thank you so much, Kyler, for having me on. It's been great to film this podcast with you and be your friend.
Hey, it's me, Kyler. If you enjoyed this conversation, please be sure to give the show a like, rating, subscription, or whatever kind of nice feedback you can provide on whatever platform you're watching or listening from. If you'd like to join our community to stay up to date or to discuss anything you heard in today's show, consider joining the Eryngo Urbanism Discord server. And finally, if you'd like to support the work of Eryngo Urbanism directly, you can do so over on Patreon. Until next time.